15th day of October, 2017 in Phoenix, Arizona. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Canto 3, Chapter 5, Vidura's Talks with Maitreya, 49. Yavan balinte jaharama kale. Yavan balinte jaharama kale. Yatavayam chanamadama yatra. Yatavayam chanamadama yatra. Yatom bhayesham najimehi loke. Yatom bhayesham tahimehi loka.
Yato bhayesham taimehi loka.
Baling haranto namadantya nuha.
Balim haranto annamadantya anuha.
Baling haranto namadantya nuha.
Balim haranto annamadantya anuha.
Yavan balinte jaharama kale.
Yavan balinde jaharama kale.
Yatha vayam cha namadama yatra. Yato bhayesham tahimehi loka. Baling hadanto namadantya nuha. Please chant.
Yavat balim te jaharam kale.
Yavat balim te jaharam kale.
Yatha vayam chanamadam yatra.
Yatha vayam chanamadam yatra.
Yatopabhesham tamimehi loka.
Yatobhayesham tahimehi loka.
Balim haranto annamadantya anuha.
Baling haranto namadantya nuha. Yavan balinte jaharam kale. Yatavayam chanamadama yatra. Yatobhayesham tahimehi loka. Baling hadanto namadantya nuha. One more? No? Yavat balinte jaharam kale. Yatavayam chanamadama yatra. Yato bhayesham tahimehi loka. Baling hadanto namadantya nuha. Ladies. Yavat balinte jaharam kale. Yatavayam chanamadama yatra. Yato bhayesham tahimehi loka. Baling haranto namadantya nuha. Yavat, as it may be. Balim, offerings. Te, your. Aja, O unborn one. Harama, shall offer. Kale, at the right time. Yatha, as much as. Vayam, we. Cha, also. Annam, food grains. Adama, shall partake. Yatra, whereupon. Yatha, as much as. Ubayesham, both for you and for us. Te, all. Ime, these. He, certainly. Loka, living entities. Balim, offerings. Harantaha, while offering. Annam,
Annam.
Grains.
Grains.
Adanti.
Adanti.
Eat.
Eat.
Anuhaha.
Anuha.
Without disturbance.
Without disturbance.
Translation. O unborn one, please enlighten us regarding the ways and means by which we can offer you all enjoyable grains and commodities, so that both we and all other living entities in this world can maintain ourselves without disturbance and can easily accumulate the necessities of life, both for you and for ourselves. Please repeat. O unborn one, please enlighten us regarding the ways and means by which we can offer you all enjoyable grains and commodities, so that both we and all other living entities in this world can maintain ourselves without disturbance and can easily accumulate the necessities of life, both for you and for ourselves. Purport. Developed consciousness begins from the human form of life and further increases in the forms of the demigods living in higher planets. The earth is situated almost in the middle of the universe, and the human form of life is the biomedium between the life of the demigods and that of the demons. The planetary systems above the earth are especially meant for the higher intellectuals, called demigods. They are called demigods because although their standard of life is far advanced in culture, enjoyment, luxury, beauty, education, and duration of life, God conscious. Such demigods are always ready to render service to the Supreme Lord, because they are perfectly aware of the fact that every living entity is constitutionally and eternally an eternal subordinate servitor of the Lord. They also know that it is the Lord only who can maintain all living entities with all the necessities of life. The Vedic hymns, Eko Bahunam Yobadatikam, Guruvan Ayatanam, Nakprajanihi Yasmin Pratishtata, Unnam Adame, etc., confirm this truth. In the Bhagavad Gita also, the Lord is mentioned as Bhuta Brit, or the maintainer of all living creatures. The modern theory that starvation is due to an increase in population is not accepted by the demigods or the devotees of the Lord. The devotees or demigods are fully aware that the Lord can maintain any number of living entities, provided they are conscious of how to eat. If they want to eat like ordinary animals who have no God consciousness, then they must live in starvation, poverty, and want, like the jungle animals in the forest. The jungle animals are also maintained by the Lord with their respective foodstuffs, but they are not advanced in God consciousness. Similarly, human beings are provided with food grains, vegetables, fruits, and milk by the grace of the Lord. But it is the duty of human beings to acknowledge the mercy of the Lord. As a matter of gratitude, they should feel obliged to the Lord for their supply of foodstuffs. And they must first offer him food and sacrifice, and then partake of the remnants. In the Bhagavad Gita 3.13, it is confirmed that one who takes foodstuffs after a performance of sacrifice eats real food for proper maintenance of the body and soul. But one who cooks for himself and does not perform any sacrifice eats only lumps of sin in the shape of foodstuffs. Such sinful eating can never make one happy or free from scarcity. Famine is not due to an increase in population, as less intelligent economists think. When human society is grateful to the Lord for all his gifts for the maintenance of the living entities, then there is certainly no scarcity or want in society. But when men are unaware of the intrinsic value of such gifts from the Lord, surely they are in want. A person who has no God consciousness may live in opulence for the time being due to his past virtuous acts. But if one forgets his relationship with the Lord, certainly he must await the stage of starvation by the law of the powerful material nature. One cannot escape the vigilance of the powerful material nature unless he leads a God-conscious or devotional life. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshu Unmidatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So the demigods are managers of this universe. There's a huge invisible bureaucracy that is running everything. And in the conditioned state, in the ignorance that most people live in, they have no idea that this is going on. They rely on the sun, they rely on the air, they rely on the gifts of nature. But they somehow come up with this idea that it's just there, or that it's just provided by accident. It's all come around by evolution or whatever. But in any case, for most people in this world, even if they're externally somewhat religious, they don't understand the moment-by-moment dependence that they have genuinely on God's grace. As he says very distinctly in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, Maya Dakshina Prakriti Suyate Sachadachana Hetanani Nakunteya Jagat Viparivartate. That this material energy creates this world and maintains it by my superintendence, Maya Dakshina Prakriti. And that's why the whole machine is working. Jagat Viparivartate means revolving and going on. So when you ignore the ultimate controller of any institution, of any type of development, then you're on very thin ground. In other words, you can easily be punished or cut off because you're not properly situated in the cycle. You remember Krishna talks about the cycle of sacrifice in chapter 3. And there he's talking about the demigods. But the demigods, as we see here, they're also offering their sacrifice to the Lord. They're recognizing their position. That's why they're demigods, not demons. And here they're saying, please enlighten us. Please inspire us with knowledge by which we can offer you enjoyable grains. In other words, by which things can properly go on by this process of sacrifice. So Krishna consciousness, based on Bhagavad Gita, it directly challenges this demonic idea that somehow this nature has been given us for our exploitation, and this is how things are going to go on. But when we don't work, Prabhupada makes it very simple. Just like there's a government, place you go. There's a federal government, state government, city government. So if you ignore that government and you just act according to your whims, Prabhupada always gives the example of driving on the wrong side of the street. So you can see it, you know, all of these big cities, they're so tied in to the transportation system. So much trillions of dollars have been spent on these roads, you know, interstate highways and all these things to move the traffic. So there has to be an organizing principle there, where you drive and the lights and the rules and the signs. And you know, I read when they first started building roads in America, when the car was invented, they didn't have any signs. They didn't think that people needed, you know, street signs where to go. So after the cars built up a little bit, they said, well, wait a minute, we have to control the movement of this traffic. It's going to get very disorganized and crashes will happen and everything. So the need for organization and guidance and maintenance. So this is a given on our material plane. If you violate that, if you go, you know, it says do not enter, you violate that, you go up the wrong entranceway into the freeway, then it'll cause an accident. The police will come and get you. You'll be liable to all kinds of things. So it's the same way with the big government. There is a process by which one can live in this world and peacefully, naturally recognize the higher authority of the Lord and his representatives, and then go back to Godhead, which is the purpose of the whole thing anyway. People forget that purpose, and they think the purpose is somehow enjoying and exploiting this material world. And that includes exploiting other living beings, animals as well, and as well, human beings also. And this is the state of the degradation of Kali Yuga. It's described, you read in the 12th canto. People will live shorter and shorter, truthfulness will be out the window, marriage will just be a convenience. Even today, the marriage is becoming less and less common. People are getting married later and then getting divorced more often. It's just because they don't recognize the sacred religious aspect of it. It's just a question of sensuality, and that's very fleeting, as we know. So the demigods, this whole Bhagavatam is so rich. It's expanding on the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. It's all there in seed form, Bhagavad Gita is a summary, very essential. And Bhagavatam is giving us so much more. Now, Prabhupada is describing the different hierarchy within the universe. You know, human beings saying, well, we're it. You know, this is it. There's no other living beings in the universe. Or if there are, you know, they don't matter to us. But really, there are living beings everywhere. There are living beings on the sun, in the air, certainly in the water, we know that. And in higher planes of existence that we can't perceive. And that's where these demigods are. Prabhupada describes that we're in the intermediate section. Now, it's important, generally the demigods on their planets, as we see so often with Indra, it's too nice and they're too powerful. It's hard for them to feel the utter helplessness that we were discussing last night. Dainya, I have no assets, please, you know, and call out to Krishna with deep feeling, like that. They're devotees, but they're Sakama devotees. They're wannabe controllers. And they're a little bit attached to the Nandanandana gardens and all these different things. You see. So, and the demon, and down in the hellish planets, it's too much pain. There's too much suffering going on. There's no question of spiritual life. You're suffering the results of it. But in the middle planet, in Earth, it can be bad. But for by and large, you see the suffering, but you also have enough peace of mind or enough opportunity, if you're fortunate, to think about these higher things. Prabhupada says in his very first purport of the Bhagavatam, 111, how the intelligent person goes out in the field at night and sees the stars and wonders, where did all this come from? How is it being organized? Where did I come from? Those questions naturally arise. And those questions are what lead to a Tato Brahma Jigyasa. That's the idea. What is Brahman? What is the source of everything? Which Vedanta Sutra says, now that we're human beings, that's what we should inquire into. But most human beings have so many other inquiries. You know, beginning of the second canto, the Bhagavad kind of begins again there, the second canto. Even they have the imbrication, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. And the very first verse, Shukadev is praising the question that Shukadev asked at the end of the first canto. And that is, when death approaches, at the time of death, when it's imminent, what should one hear about? What should one worship? What should one think about? In other words, how should we direct our consciousness at that all-important moment? And what does Shukadev say? Very nice question. Because the answer to this question is beneficial for all humanity. And this is praised by all those who know the truth. On the other hand, there's a very nice little lesson right at the beginning of that second canto. You know, so this is he's starting with it. On the other hand, those who are oblivious to Atma Tattva, they have millions and billions. He talks thousands, but with the internet, it's millions and billions of questions that have nothing to do with Krishna. In other words, householders are simply concerned with material things. Materialists, total materialists. And what's the nature of their life? You know, it's wasting the precious human life. Nidraya prayate naktam vivayena chabhavaya dibachartehe yanrajat kutumba paranenava. At night, you waste time sleeping, or sometimes sex life. During the day, running to make money. And on the weekends, shopping to maintain the family. This is what he says. Kutumba paranenava. Prabhupada uses that word once in a year. It's really getting and spending, getting and spending. In this way, we waste our days. There's even an English poem about that. So, and then, so now you create a little bubble of false security. Just like the poor people in Northern California. You know, some of them are very wealthy people. When they're living in their houses, idyllic. One poor guy I was reading, he was visiting his sister or somebody there, and he had rented a house out in the woods, you know. And he was saying, "Oh, I want to move up here." He's living down in Southern California. It's so beautiful, foliage and everything. Guy died. And the flame just came and overwhelmed and finished. This is the nature of this material world. Is that you try to build some security, some happy situation. You become completely illusioned and intoxicated with it. Think it'll last forever. So that's what he describes in the next verse. The defense system, the fallible soldiers. Remember the fallible soldiers? Deha patta kadatradi shatma sainyeshva sattvapi tesham pamatto nadadam pashan abhina pashyati. So the first line of defense is the body. You know, the health. Without the health, you can't be good. All right, got a healthy body. Then you expand. You have the children, wife, family, extended family, bank account, insurance policies, defense department, right? We've gone together in this, you know, all fallible soldiers. The real danger is when you take shelter of something that's not a real shelter, like a stone boat, right? Oh, let's cross the ocean, get in the stone boat and it sinks. This is the problem. So, but the amazing thing is, it's not a mystery. You know, in the past, grandfathers, children, oh, they've all died, gone away. The body has certainly died. So seeing and knowing, you don't see. This is a very nice statement. Pashyanapi na pashyati. What's right in front of your face, you can't see. I'm always amazed, you know, and Prabhupada was amazed too, how with this, you know, vast arrangement on the natural scale, human scale, we can understand. Everything in this room was fashioned. There's an idea behind it. There's a blueprint, right? From the fans to the Vyasa-san to the pillar to the books. It's all a result of human intelligence. Marshalling the forces of nature, hiring someone, or there's a blueprint, there's a plan, and there's execution, and it comes out. You can see the intelligence everywhere if you just look, if you think about it. So then you walk outside the door, right? And there's this foliage, this beautiful peepal tree growing up, you know, and the sun and the moon are coming, and all the natural elements are there. And if you get down right into the atoms and the molecules, there's tremendous balance in the protons. Everything is a sign of intelligence, organization, and information content. My old friend Sadapura, he lived with him several years. Information, the amount of information, he took a PhD, I think, in information theory. This is some branch of mathematics that was, you know, someone like Sadapura. But in layman terms, it's the idea that you can see organization and you can see the result of intelligent design in everything, then that's more information. When you get down into the molecules and everything, there's information everywhere. Everything, there's a hand of someone intelligent. And it's not human beings. So this is, according to Thomas Aquinas, this is proof of God. This is one of his proofs of God, is the need for an intelligent designer in the world. And somehow these scientists in the university and everywhere, intelligent design has become a term of derision. Oh, that's creationism. You think it happened in, you know, 6,000 years. In other words, they identify that with a crippled idea that's, you know, in some other religion. But here in the Bhagavatam, we have detailed description of where we live, right? We live with the body and the intelligence and the senses and the ego. That we can understand. It's not a mystery. And how the ego in interacting with the false ego, interacting with the motive, produces the mind. In the mode of passion, produces the senses. In the mode of ignorance, produces the sense objects and all these things. So it makes perfect sense. It's intellectually satisfying. So here we have these demigods who no one believes in the modern, you know, materialistic society. But it makes perfect sense. Why should God, you know, what would you do if you were God? Would you be wrapped up in managing the huge bureaucracy of the many, many universes? And that's all you're doing, you know, creating, destroying, maintaining, and punishing, and rewarding, you know? That's delegated. That's all delegated. If you were very powerful, even on this earth, if you get so much money, you hire people to do all this stuff when you go out on the golf course, right? You may spend your day playing and you have a little cell phone as an emergency comes, right? That's the idea. So Krishna, he's playing, right? The original Krishna. That's his life. Because that's what he wants to do. What we really want to do, even on this plane, we want to enjoy idyllic relations with others, loving relationships in a beautiful place, right? That's what we really want to do. But we can't. We have to work in order to maintain that and then have little bits of that imitation. So that makes perfect sense. Prabhupada would tell the story of one of his godbrothers. I think it was a German fellow who came to India in search of God. He didn't know much. Shishi Radha Madhava Hari Ki Jai, Shishi Gaur Nitai Hari Ki Jai, Dinati Ki Jai. So do you know this story? He went around to different temples, you know, and he saw the Kali, you know, fierce Kali. So Shiva meditating. Some other, maybe Ganesh, you know. And then he came to a Radha Krishna temple. He saw Krishna standing there in that super beautiful pose, playing the flute. Obviously not working, you know. He's just enjoying himself. This must be God. All the others are doing things, you know, working. Kali has got a lot of work to do. So this Krishna, he must be God because he's delegated everything to him. Very intelligent, investigated, became initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So it makes perfect sense. And the demigods here, they're praying to be able to do their duty, you know, which is to manage the world, to maintain, to provide what's necessary, to reward those who perform sacrifices. And they're giving their sacrifices to Krishna. So this should increase our faith, you know. Now Prabhupada talks about starvation. Now he refers to, I believe, Anad Bhavanti Bhutani here. There's a reference, yeah, it's got to be. Yogi Shishtashanak Santo, Muchante Savakilvishai, Bundate Dvakam Papam Ye Pachantyata Karana. Third chapter is really important. It's a very important verse. Now I'll tell you a little joke about this verse. It's not about the verse, but back in '79, I was in New York. The old famous 55th Street Temple at 11, you know, we had in Manhattan before we had to sell it. And so the Christmas Marathon came on. And in those days, they would send devotees out dressed as Santa Claus sometimes. I was sent out dressed as Santa Claus with a big pillow, you know, and a beard and everything. And we would collect on the subway. We'd have a BTG, and we would, you know, ho, 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 Merry Christmas, you know, we have the magazines and go around. So we had to convince the authorities that we were bona fide, and this Santa dress we have is in our Shastra. How to do that? In this verse. Yogi Shishtashinak Santa. The word is Santa, it's right here. And it's the same word. It means saint. Mucha days have a good. So we were able to convince him. We had a whole crew of Santa. I was one of them, Santa Claus, going out on the subway. So what the verse means is that the saints, they only eat food that's first been offered for sacrifice. And that's what the offering is all about. We're recognizing, Krishna, you gave it to us. You know, we're preparing it for your pleasure. You take it first. And whatever remnants you leave, we'll take that. That's devotion. And then you become free from sinful reactions just by that act. Because Krishna's there in the prasadam and he's purifying. So you nourish body, mind, and soul, you know, by that prasadam. This is the science of prasadam. The foundation of the movement is basically based on this prasadam idea. You know, you know the story in this 26th Avenue. Prabhupada would cook himself. You can imagine those feasts. He would cook this feast himself, and people would come on Sundays, and they would come back, you know, to get the feast. So this is how the movement grew. On the other hand, if you just cook for yourself, then you're eating only sin. Now, you expand this into the modern day, and you have a food industry whose only purpose in life is to make money, you know? So I don't even want to think about what they do with the cows and everything. But the idea is they engineer these foods, the processed foods, which we don't eat, right? With, you know, adding a little more sugar here, a little more salt, a little more oil, or whatever, you know, they use. So these three elements are very attractive: sugar, salt, and grease. And in doing that, they have a whole, you know, schools of you train how to the mouthfeel and the taste and everything. And you go to the supermarkets, you know, it's a whole aisle of snack foods and things that have been processed, you know. And obviously, this is why there's an obesity epidemic in America. They've got this cheap sugar in the form of what is it called? They get it from corn, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, you know, which it's totally artificial sugar, but it has the nature of making you fat. So huge percentage of people are obese. But so that in itself is obviously a sinful reaction. from eating just for pleasure, you see? And they get these poor people, they don't know anything else, and they just become addicted to that food, literally. So we avoid all that. You see how in the devotees, we avoid all of this just by the science of prasada, preparing natural things from, you know, the vegetarian ingredients, not artificial. You can just buy it in the store. So that's what Prabhupada mentions in this purport. So the idea of sacrifice. Our whole life is meant to be a sacrifice. There's the sacrifice and charity. You remember that in the 18th chapter, because you don't give up these acts. Even if you become advanced in yoga, you still perform these acts. Sacrifice, austerity, and charity. Yajna, dana, and tapa. Now, how do they integrate into the process of devotional service? Think about it, you know. Yajna Shishtashana Santo, certainly the prasadam, but also Sankirtan Yajna. So what is the principle of sacrifice? Is that you're sacrificing your own time, your comfort, your money, whatever you have that you value for a higher end. And when we sacrifice it for Krishna's pleasure, that's called bhakti, when you think about it. And that kind of, these concepts are not mutually exclusive. That's an austerity, to not enjoy the money you're giving, but to put it in the handi. People would think that's pretty austere, you know. That's an austerity. It's also charity. It's also dana, right? So we're giving charity in the sense that we're giving our life energy. The ideal in devotion is that every moment you're dedicating your life force, you're dedicating whatever money you have, whatever food you have, whatever intelligence you have. All of this is being given to Krishna, and it's a sacrifice, and it's also done in austerity. And that pleases Krishna. That connects us to Krishna. So we can think of all of devotional service within those terms of sacrifice, austerity, accepting things that you might ordinarily accept for the pleasure of the Guru and Krishna, giving up those things that you really want not to accept, but you have to give them up. That's surrender, but it's also austerity, isn't it? That's a kind of austerity. But the wonderful thing about Krishna consciousness is that in ordinary terms, the idea of yajna and dana and tapa, people say, okay, I should do it, I have to do it in order to live nicely in this world. But I don't want to do it, really, you know, deep in mind. But in Krishna consciousness, they become sources of pleasure. Until you really want, it's not really a sacrifice if you want to give it. So Sankirtan Yajna, you know, if you're actually in a nice kirtan, devotees go for it, and they go for 12 hours sometimes just chanting. Where's the sacrifice? Everybody's in bliss, tears are flowing. You see? So the sacrifice turns into just an act of love and pleasure. That's the thing about Krishna consciousness. What was once austere, you have to do, it's a matter of duty, turns into something you really want to do. And the things that you give up that you really wanted to do, I don't even want to think about them anymore. Like Yamunacharya, right? With his, even sex life. I spit at the thought. Now that I'm enjoying ever new mellows by serving the lotus feet of Krishna. So this principle, I was just reviewing, you know, read these books, especially like this Nectar of Instruction book. You know, I remember, again, going back to New York, this is back to 79. How many years is that? 38 years. And we had when that book came out, it came out, you know, while we were living there. And so we had a principle, we would chant the first 8 verses every day. After Bhagavatam class. So, you know, they're like part of me now. Vacho, Vejam, Madasakro, Davega. You know. But then when we got to those last two that we chant, that struck home so much in me. And just think about it. It says, Syat Krishna Nama Charitari Satapya Vidya Kitto Pataptarasanasana Rochikan Kint Badaradhanudinam Kodusai Vajishta Svadri Kramad Bhavati Tadganamula Hantri. I don't know how many are familiar with this verse, but it just strikes home. It says, the name, form, qualities of Krishna are as sweet as nectar, you see. But because our tongue is covered by the bile of ignorance, in other words, we're in illusion, we don't taste it as such. But isn't it a wonderful thing that if you go on chanting, hearing chanting about Krishna's name, form, qualities, etc., gradually the disease is destroyed at its root, and it becomes sweet as anything. The example is given of hepatitis. Probably called jaundice. Jaundice is actually the state of your skin. That's the yellow. That's a result of hepatitis, but the idea is. So if you have hepatitis, then suddenly sweet things don't taste sweet anymore. They can even taste bitter. I had a serious case one time, and I can attest it's actually true. But one of the cures for hepatitis is you take rock candy. You know, it helps to cure the disease. So you take the rock candy. It's bitter, but you say, well, this is my medicine, so I take it. And after some time, you cure it, and it tastes sweet again. So similarly, we're in a disease condition now. This is not our natural condition. Being conditioned souls, and being, you know, getting born and dying, especially forgetting Krishna, being alienated and adrift in this material world. So by connecting back to Krishna with his, chiefly through the name and other sound vibration, but all the other services that support that, then it may be austere at first. You know, we want to do other things with our senses, but we say, no, I take initiation, I have to do this is regulation. Okay, my intelligence is strong. I understand, I have my Guru Dev, I'm going to do it. I get up early, and then the greatest austerity that can come at that time, the cold shower. This is back in New York in '73. I joined in March 27th. I moved in. It's still pretty cold. In New York. It was, so the water coming out of the tap is freezing cold, not like here. So, I'm just like a car me basically. So I joined. And that's part of the program. Get up at 3:30 so you can make it down by 4:30, and you take a cold shower. So we lined up. There weren't that many bathrooms, a lot of devotees. And it's my turn. Now what? Am I going to just walk out the door? Am I going to bloop on the basis of the cold shower? So I remembered I had been practicing Hatha Yoga, and with some pranayama. There's something called a warming breath. I don't know if you ever know that. So I got in there, turned on the cold shower, and I was breathing like anything, and it helped. I didn't feel, I felt it cold, but it wasn't like freaking me out. So I took my 16-second shower, and I got out. I felt like a great yogi. I performed this austerity. And then, skip down to Mangalarti, get dressed like that. So after some time, the mind gets used to that, and it's like, it's not giving you so much back talk. You know what I mean? It's all like a mental thing. So this cold shower is part of the program, and I kept doing the warming breaths. I got to agree. Now I don't bother. So the idea is and then getting up early is a huge thing. For that early, this is your circadian rhythms aren't. That's a huge austerity at first, and then after some time, it just comes natural. You can't sleep past, the alarm goes off there. So similarly, everything about Krishna consciousness has its sweetness to it. There's a certain sweetness in being able to perform an austerity for Krishna. As the book distributors have been going out for 35 years, I mean, some of you probably did plenty of that yourself. But it's, you're compelled to go. You feel it's urgent. You've got the cure for the deadly disease of birth and death. What are you going to do? You have to give it out. I fortunately I was able to be on the production end of that, producing the book, so I felt part of it. But it becomes a great pleasure. The things that were difficult. So that's what this verse is all about. And then the next verse, the essence of all advice. Now this is serious advice because it talks about going to Vrindavan, but you could also live in Vrindavan by remembering Vrindavan. Tannabarupa charitari sukirtananu smityo kumena rasanama nasi niyoja tishtan vrajeta danuraga jananu gami kalangayed akidamittu vadeshasara. This is the essence of all the essence of knowledge. The whole book is called Upadeshamrita, right? So it's the nectar of the instruction. There's only 11 verses, so it's the essence of. But this is the essence of the essence. So he's saying that Tan Navarupa, Krishna's name, Rupa, his form, qualities, past. Charitari and his activities, Sukirtanana, singing and chanting them very nicely, and thus remembering. Smrityo Kramena, engaging the tongue and the mind. Vasanama Nasi Niyoja. So this is how it works. By hearing, chanting, you have to come to remembrance. Anudinam, every day, to spend one's day, all day, really saying here. situated in Vrindavan, and hearing and chanting, about Krishna. This is the essence of all advice. This is how to achieve perfection. Then from there, the last 3 verses go up, and talk about eventually bring you to Radha Kund. But the idea is that this is the essence of our practice. The whole thing rests on the hearing and chanting and the progressive remembrance. I'll give you a nice verse. I remember this is at the end of chapter 16 of the 12th, chapter 12, verse 16, chapter 12, 5th canto. This is the teachings of Jadbar to King Mahugana. And this verse, I've never done this before or since. It was written on a board. Gopal Krishna Maharaj was giving a class in Toronto. He used to come to the Ratha Yatra Day where I've been going up for about 10 years. And the translation and everything was so exciting to me that I actually memorized it just by looking at the board. The Sanskrit is quite easy. So let's see if I can remember now. Tasman naro sanga susanga jata gyanasinenatam vivripna moha haring tadiha katana shutabhyam. Yeah, katana shutabhyam. Labda smrtiya titipana madgama. So what he's saying there is that a human being, therefore a human being, he's given a whole lesson here, just in 15 verses. It's a short chapter. Should practice this essential basic practice. Give up bad association and go with good association. It's called Sangha Tasmat Naro Asanga Susanga. Give up the Asanga means not associating with materialists. Susanga means associated with devotees. What happens? Jata, that gives birth to the Jnanasina, the sword of knowledge, by which we can cut off all our illusion. You see? Vivrikna moha. And then continuing, Haring tariha. Iha with a long I and an A means activities, or in this case, pastimes. And the pastimes of Hari, Katana Shratabhya, chanting and hearing and chanting. Thus, labda smritir, attaining, there's 2 meanings for this. The meaning Srila Prabhupada gave is that you regain your memory of Krishna that we lost when we left the spiritual world. That's his understanding of it. And then yata to Padamaddhana, thus goes very nicely to the supreme goal of the Loka Vrindavan. The whole thing is there in the verse. Now, the other meaning of labda smriti, as given by Vishnu Chakravarti, I looked into this verse, is that you attain constant remembrance of Krishna. Constant remembrance of Krishna is a prerequisite for going back to Godhead. That's why Prabhupada say, yes, all right, 16 rounds, minimum, Kirtaniya Sadahari, chanting is supposed to be going on all the time. So this is a high platform. It's something we can aspire for, but it's something we should also work toward. And part of that, Jnanasina, the sword of knowledge, is right here in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is our means of conquest. It is what does it need of any other scripture? Of course, we have so many other scriptures coming down, based on Bhagavatam. But really, this is the foundation. And in this verse, we have a wonderful expression by the demigods. Sometimes we forget that they're also living entities with feelings and all these things. They're not just functionaries. They're also, asking the Lord to enlighten them with the intelligence to perform their duty nicely together. This is another point we made yesterday, how they want to do it together in a coordinated way, so that the praja, the citizens can make progress, they can be nourished. All of the things that have to go on to manage this universe will happen nicely. So that's what we're seeing here. And see, Prabhupada, he's describing, and this is just striking me now because of this, what's going on in Northern California and all these disasters. A person who has no God consciousness may live in opulence for the time being to his past, but if one forgets his relation with the Lord, certainly he must await the stage of starvation by the law of powerful nature. So it may not be starvation, because it's talking about Anna here, this is in verse. But some disaster would strike. The America is so complacent, so ignorant. We're thinking we're sitting on top of the world. But people are realizing at any moment, there's Houston, there's Miami, Northern California, there's Puerto Rico. These disasters are the Adi Daivik are hitting really hard now. And the Adi Baltic can blast everything. World War III. People are talking about it now, and my God. I mean, I grew up with that in the 50s and 60s, the Cold War, you know, and it's, I mean, just always thinking at any moment, you know, this war could break out. I was there, I remember. Some of you are too old, I think maybe the older members here can remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, it was really, you know, most of the people in the world thought this is it. It's finished. You've got all these Russian boats, you know, carrying missiles going toward Cuba, which is blockaded. They didn't call it a blockade because that's an act of war. They called it a quarantine, but it was a blockade. And the boats were steaming, and everyone was saying, what's going to happen? And of course, they stopped. You know, the boats didn't challenge America. But I learned something recently that you may not know. We came this close. There was one Russian admiral who runs the ships who saved the world from oblivion. We wouldn't be sitting here now. I mean, it's Krishna's plan, ultimately, of course. But here's what happened, you know, and this is how close we came, and it's not the only time. There's several instances like this. Some of you may know. So the boats are steaming, you know, together, and they stop. But what nobody knew, except a few in the American military, is that the Russians also had these submarines accompanying their little fleet carrying the missiles, you know, they put on Cuba. And those submarines, at least one of them, had a nuclear-tipped torpedo. Yes, nuclear bomb on the torpedo that could sink any ship we had. We had all these big aircraft carriers and everything down there also. I was living in New York with my parents. I was 14 years old. So nobody knew that at the time. Now, what happened is that we were able with our radar to see, oh, they've got these submarines down there, and they're threatening us. We want them to come up to surface, you know. So we notified Moscow by radio that we're going to send down these depth charges. You may have known those are things that explode underwater and they can sink submarines. But they have certain ones that don't penetrate the hull, but just give you warning that you better come on up, you know. So we notified Moscow, but we had no way of notifying the guys down there. We left that up to Moscow. They didn't either. So we're dropping these depth charges, thinking that it'll warn them to come up. But they're thinking that World War III has started and they're trying to sink us. So there's three leaders, there's two captains on the boat, and because of the nuclear bomb, so both had to agree, you know, to turn the keys. You've seen the movies. And there's also the admiral happened to be on that particular submarine. So the two captains said, yeah, now we got to send the torpedo. It's the end of the world. We're going to sink that aircraft carrier, that huge ship. You know. But the admiral said, no, 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 this must be a mistake. He had doubts that World War III had started. And because he was the admiral, because he was in charge, he stopped that from shooting. So eventually they surfaced and there's no war going on. You see how close we came? That one guy. And there was another instance I want to tell about, another Russian guy in a bunker. The computer malfunction, it looked like America's sending missiles up. All he had to do was call his superiors and it would have been World War III. So that doesn't make sense. There's only 6 missiles that they're really attacking. They have hundreds of missiles. So he said he took a risk. He said it's a computer glitch. And we're saved. He died a few years ago. He was honored, the man who saved the world. This is the mad world we live in. And now there's somebody in the presidentship who's batty, who's got his finger on the button. So what do you think our response should be? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. That's our response, personally. And at the same time, trying to give Krishna guidance. It's always the same. We're the only ones who really have any shelter from this. Everyone else, you know, whether it's their fancy home or their bank account or, you know, whatever it is, it's all going to go up in ash and flames if the war actually occurs. But the devotees, one who has some assets in Krishna consciousness, that will last. That cannot be destroyed. That's right there in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So this is we should be, you know, should pray like anything. That you know, of course, we know this is supposed to last more than 27,000 years. It's not in the Bhagavatam. So somehow we have confidence it's going to come through. But at the same time, let's get serious. We may not have so many years or even days. Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments? Prabhu?
In the translation,
Prabhupada has mentioned God consciousness rather than Krishna consciousness. Is
it in a translation?
In the different audience? Whereas in the ones we say that not places mention God consciousness.
Oh, God consciousness. Yeah, he said beauty, always fully God conscious.
Is he meaning
Krishna conscious?
Other
Yeah.
audience, different audience, or?
No, it's just that sometimes Prabhupada would use different words. You know, he didn't always use Krishna conscious. But by this time in the Bhagavatam, we should know that Krishna is God. So it's the same thing. And you may be right that, you know, understanding his audience, this would have more meaning to them if it's just God consciousness. And it's funny, you know, there's that whole pastime in the beginning of the movement where what are we going to name this society, right? And Prabhupada's International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and one of his, I think it was Hayagriva, he suggested, Prabhupada, if we call it God consciousness, we'll have a wider appeal. He says, no, we're going to call it Krishna consciousness, and we'll explain to him that, explain to the world that Krishna is God. That's the whole idea. But the fact is that in an earlier time, I think it was maybe when Prabhupada came, he was trying to start something when he was on the Bowery, or it may have been in India. He actually had that name, God consciousness. He had that. He saw that. But when he came to America, he had already been through so much. Krishna had appeared to him rowing the boat after the second heart attack. You remember that? He had already seen Krishna's power, you know, blowing away so many apparent impediments, many of which is him just coming to America. That he said, no, we're going to go for the rhinoceros. We're going to go Krishna consciousness, chant Hare Krishna in the streets. The first Harinam was controversial amongst all the members, you know. The first devotees, they didn't all want to go out in public, you know, and do this. They said, well, let's keep it inside. You know, people are going to think we're weird. And Brother said, no, we're going out. And he led it. He didn't lead them. I don't know if you know, the first Harinam was in Washington Square Park. It wasn't in Tompkins Square Park. I don't know if you know that piece of history. I lived down there for a year. I know all that area. Washington Square is on the west side. It's in the West Village. That's where, you know, it built up. East Village was all the hippies and Puerto Ricans and the Poles. You know, it's poor. But actually, the east side proved to be the fertile ground where Prabhupada was able to plant the seed. That the 22nd Avenue is in the east, what we used to call the East Village. But all the people, every Sunday, it would be a big festival out in the park, Washington Square Park. Also in Tompkins, but a different crowd would come to watch. And these were all the folk singers would come. Sometimes Joan Baez would come there, you know, and famous singers would come and sing at the fountain. I used to go there on Sundays. So that's where Prabhupada wanted to go. But that was more carefully patrolled by the police also. So first he came and they all sat down on the grass and started singing, you know. And the police came and said, don't you see the sign? They said, who's in charge here? So only Prabhupada could raise his hand. They said, don't you see the sign? It says, don't get off the grass, you know, because they didn't have the sign, the grass would be finished because everyone would go on to it. So I thought, okay, so he stood up, came in and sat down right on the pavement and started chanting. So freedom of speech, freedom of religion, you know, they couldn't stop him, you know. But he felt that there was more tension there, so that from then on, he was in Tompkins Square Park. And that's where things really took off. Big crowd would gather, you know, and Prabhupada would go on for hours with that little bongo drum. You seen pictures? There was no madanga. And he's being that drum, you know. He calls it a little dundubi, you know. That's how the whole thing started. It started on the strength of Prabhupada's pure chanting, and it's continuing on the strength of the pure chanting. And that's our tradition. That's our jagad, our dana, and our tapa, and everything else. Any other questions? Yes, Prabhu.
Lots of demons, they are killed by the Lord incarnation on the earth planet.
On the earth planet.
Lots of some of the yeah. Still we are saying demons
Are down. Yeah, it's like there are lower planets. You know, where the demons, the lower heavenly planets, you have the subterranean heavenly planets. There's
demons, lots of demons are ruling over the earth. And lots of whatever we are reading, the books.
Yeah. Well, Prabhupada is making a rough division here, upper, middle, and lower. You know, and the lower planets well, you know, there's hellish planets down there. You know, that's where they are, down near the bottom of the universe. And that's described in the 5th canto. And there, it's not necessarily demons. You know, you have the agents of Yamaraj administering punishment to those who were demons, you know, and then, you know, taking birth and then they're going to get lower animal bodies and all these different things. So, but you're right, in this Kali Yuga especially, there are many demons on the earth. I mean, why did Krishna appear 5,000 years ago? Because the earth had been overrun by demoniac armies, right? There's Kamsa, Jarasandha, and so many others. So the demons, and they can go on the heavenly planets as well. So that's also in the Bhagavatam. So, but the main idea is that, at least, you know, now, even at this point in Kali Yuga, there are places, there are situations where you can contemplate these things, where you can cultivate Krishna consciousness. And we become, you know, the suras. We may start out as a sura, but you become a sura. You can become a space sura by the process of devotional service. Every living entity, every soul, is originally a servant of Krishna. But it's mind-boggling how low you can go and how you know, degraded you can become by forgetting Krishna and becoming under the influence of the material energy and making choices to associate with the lower modes. So I wouldn't worry about, yeah, there's demons everywhere, even in the heavenly planets. You read in the 6th canto that battles are going on. You know, sometimes they take over the heavenly planet. Kashipu was sitting on the throne of Indra. So in every level, there can be saints and demons. But in the middle planet here, there's mostly innocent people who are just being pushed around by the big demons, you know, and they become degraded. But some of them, many of them, can also be enlightened, or they can be attracted, because they're not confirmed enemies of God. This is what a real demon is. Declares, this is, you read the 16th chapter. They declare there's no Ishvara. How's it go? Asatyam apatishtam te jagadahu anishvaram aparaspada sambhutam kimanyakamahoitikam. Yeah, there's no truth. There's no ultimate truth. There's no foundation of this world. You know, you guys with your intelligent design. There's no foundation. There's no intelligent foundation. There's no Ishvara. And everything is, you know, just a matter of chance, of attraction, repulsion, like that. And with that philosophy, then they try to exploit as much as possible, and they get bound up by unlimited desires, and Krishna punishes them like anything. So I'll end with this, a couple of little verses. At the end of the 16th chapter, I'll give you a poem or two. And this is very important, these 4 verses at the end of the 16th chapter. So he says, he's describing the punishment of the demons, and it's their hellish, you know, situation. So he said, Tribadam, Nadakasedam, Dwaram Nashanamatma, Kama, Krodha, Tata, Lobas, Tasmarita, Toyam Tajay. There's 3 gates leading to this hell. And we've already been there. And that is lust, anger, and greed. The wise man, the wise person, gives these up. You know, and then he describes the benefit of giving them up. Eta vamukta kontaya tamo dwarais to be in raha. Achayat acharat yatmanakshayas tato yati padam gatim. So there's a great contrast. One is going down to hell and then going up. So those who have escaped these 3 gates, eta vamukta tamo dwarais to be in the gates to darkness and pollution. That person, that human being, acharat yatmanakshayas. This is a very important lesson. He acts only to achieve Shreya, to his ultimate good. This was Arjun's question at the beginning of the Gita. Please instruct me how I can achieve my ultimate good. I don't know. I realize I'm in confusion. So you tell me for certain. I'm now your disciple, you're my guru. Gita spoke. So again, he's saying that if you escape these gates, if you are able to conquer over them by the process of yoga, then you can act for your own ultimate welfare and go back to Godhead. But on the other hand, he goes back and forth. This is a very famous verse. But one who rejects, and here he brings in Shastra, one who rejects the Vidhi, the instructions of Shastra, and simply acts whimsically, Such a person can never attain perfection, happiness, or the ultimate goal, which is going back to God. And so that last verse, this is a key. It's a tasmat verse, a therefore verse, winding up an argument. Tasmat shastra pramanam te karya karya velostito gyatva shastra vidhanoktam karma karta niharasi. So therefore, to determine what to do and what not to do, you should take as your evidence, as your final word, Shastra, revealed Shastra, as given by PRABHU. And having understood that, one should act in such a way as a matter of duty. You see? It starts out as duty and ends up as spontaneous devotion. So a very important instruction at the end of that 16th chapter. And now I'll end with a sweet poem, because you're supposed to end with something sweet. That was a little chutney, not chutney. So, very important instruction. So I was thinking of sharing this a few verses from this song of the female parrot in Govinda Lilamrita. There's one female parrot praying to Radharani to always serve her lotus feet, and a male parrot prays to Krishna to always serve his lotus feet. So I have the one to Radharani memorized better. Don't ask me why. So the Sanskrit is really exquisite, as it always is with Krishna's Kavira. It starts out like this. Kumkamata kanchanam jagavahari goraba pitanachitam jagandha kirtinandi soraba ballavesha suna sava vanchitarti sadika maya matma pada punna dasa dasturadika. Her gold complexion steals the pride of gold and lotus tinged with red. Her fragrance mocks the scent of lotus bloom with saffron powder spread. Her skill in satisfying Sri Hari is perfect and complete. May Radhika bestow on me the service of the lotus feet. So there's 8 verses like that. Now if I sing more to Radharani and none to Krishna, Radharani will get angry at me. So I better just sing the one to Krishna, the first one. This is it. Ambudanjan, the male parrot, you see. Ambudanjan enna nili nandi kanti dambara kumkamodya daki vidyanangsha divyadambara shimaranga charchitendu pitta nakta chandana swangvidasit those to me suballa vendanandana. His dark complexion mocks mascara, sapphires, and the blackish cloud. His garments shine like reddish rising sun with lightning bolts endowed. With sandal paste enhanced with camphor, his handsome limbs replete. May none the sun bestow on me the service of his lotus feet. Hare Krishna. Now, where's Manish? Not here when we need him. He's got all my poetry. I gave it to him by an airdrop from this to his iPhone. So I'll make sure I leave it with Prema Doctor so you'll all have access. Feel free to give it out to everybody. I used to worry, you know, I used to make these tapes and I was selling them. You know, I was making a little Lakshmi for my needs. And then I was, oh, somebody's copying my tapes without, you know, giving me the due royalty. You know, and I feel bad for it. I said, it's not worth it. I just give it all away now. The goodwill from the devotees is worth much more than whatever I can make. So feel free to give it. I also give away my recordings. I've got a Shastra recordings, full Bhagavad Gita with purports. Krishna's Vrindavan and Dwarka Leela from the 10th canto. Some Sanskrit and mostly just the English translations. Rupa Goswami sampler. Different selections for Rupa Goswami's Stavamala. And a whole bunch of other things. Padyavali. Padyavali is really incredible. Padyavali is Rupa Goswami's own nectar file. These are his favorite verses. Some of them he wrote, most of them he didn't. Like, I'll give you a sample. I know I'm going over time. So, very, very rare verse. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. You know, he was converted by Lord Chaitanya. He was kind of an impersonalist, really, and then he became a sold-out bhakta, great devotee. So he, but his Sanskrit, excellent. He wrote 100 verses like that when he was, you know, when he saw Lord Chaitanya with the 6-arm form. Who can do that? You know, Keshava Kashmiri maybe. But these are all exquisite verses. But he also wrote many, you know, bhajan verses, other verses, and they're collected in Padyavali. So this one, every syllable in this verse is long. There's no shorts, all long. Barhapidam Maulam Dimbran Vangshi Nadan Atanvan Nana Kalpa Shri Sampanno Gopastri Bisambita Netanandam Kuvan Krishna Tantvarasman Viksheta Save Kama Sampadyerat Asmakam Vidyasina. Everyone's long chilla, heavy chilla. So I put it into a poem. This one I could match the meter. Easy. Decked with crown of peacock plumes and chanting songs with flute you sing, wearing lovely ornaments while standing in the gopis' ring. Dear most Krishna, eyes delight, if you will kindly glance our way, all our heart's desires will be fulfilled on this most blessed day. Or bless you, the PRABHU. Okay, did you get it? I got it. Hare Krishna. I have to write more poetry. I get a lot of mileage out of that poetry. Yeah, but the thing is, the hint is, it's like the Shastra is all in poetry, you know, in verses. That's the way the spiritual world is. Every word is a song. I'm sorry?
One quality of devotee is curry.
I'm not a Kavi. I'm just